A lot of movies came out in 2019, and I missed most of them. But for the 35 I did see, I thought it would be fun to run through and kind of give my quick impressions on all of them. We're going to do this as fast as we can, so ready? Let's go.
Toothless has a girlfriend.
At least it was better than Rise of Skywalker? This is an okay end of the trilogy. Neither sequel has really risen to the level of the first movie, but they're not bad. Hidden World is just, unfortunately, forgettable, and with the exception of the fancy dragon lair place, it's rather bland looking. Nothing in the writing or story is spectacular, aside from Bearded Hiccup, of course, but it wraps things up in a relatively satisfying way without undermining characterizations or consequences from the previous films. If you've seen the first two, I'd say this one is worth the watch.
Billy called and said, Andy, we need you to take one big thing for the team. And I said, oh my gosh, I've been taking something for the team every day. He said, well, you're our wonderful gay leader.
It was between Netflix and Hulu, and someone recommended Netflix, so that's the Fire Festival documentary I watched. It's actually crazy just how many people were screwed over by this quote-unquote festival scam. The interviews they got with former employees are eye-opening, and although there is some speculation that the documentary itself may be slanting some of the information regarding the marketing agency that helped perpetuate the scam, I think it's still an absolutely fascinating look at an unbelievable story well worth your time.
Isabel runs an orphanage in India that I'm thinking of funding.
Oh,
Yeah.
what are you doing here?
Winner of the most boring movie of the year that I also made my sister sit through because I thought it was going to be good award. The acting is terrible, the dialogue is so unrealistic, the whole thing would be laughable if it wasn't so unbelievably boring. My sister and I saw all of the twists coming, and there's absolutely nothing compelling about the story or the characters. You've probably never heard of this movie, and I'd recommend keeping the last 30 seconds as your only interaction with it.
What do you dream for?
That less people have to say goodbye too soon to people they love.
This one took me a while to get to, but I'm so glad I did. If you liked Fire, you're gonna love this documentary too. It's on the woman who convinced Silicon Valley that her blood testing machine was worth $9 billion. Oh, and the machine didn't even work. It's an interesting look at someone who is so consumed with an idea, they've completely convinced themselves they're changing the world for the better, all the while creating havoc and ruining lives.
Now, the carp that you're catching likes corn and Wheaties. Have you heard of Wheaties cereal?
Wheaties, W-E-D-S.
W-E-E-T-E-S.
No, I don't know. I don't know that.
Yep, that's the best.
My favorite documentary from this year. A Chinese company buys an abandoned US factory and hires a combination of American and Chinese workers, and, well, there's a bit of a culture clash as a result. How they got some of the quotes they did from these Chinese managers, I'll never know, but it's such an incredible look at a world that I really didn't know much about. There's not really much more I can say without pulling directly from the film itself. Just watch it.
Aren't we having a super fun time on our trip to Pleasant Valley Farm?
It's a very fun, albeit slow to start, rom-com musical mashup. And Lupita's in it, so, just watch it for her, if nothing else.
My father suggested that they rename me. They picked LUCE, which means light.
I really need to see this one again. This movie is very on the nose with its message, and yet somehow remains nuanced, thought-provoking, and largely left open for interpretation. This film has fantastic acting, killer dialogue, and it left me with a desire for more after the credits rolled, though the end does feel a tad too abrupt. Still, I hope we see more films that want to incorporate heavy social commentary in their narrative that take an approach similar to LUCE.
I prayed for a second chance to save her.
This is the one Sundance movie I actually saw at a Sundance screening. I thought this one had an intriguing premise and was overall pretty good, but ultimately, it is just pretty good. There are a lot of different thrillers I saw this year that I'd heartily recommend before you check out this one.
A race of noble warriors.
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
I thought this was a solid low to mid-tier installment in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Captain Marvel is one of my less favorite characters in the MCU, and I don't know if that stems from how she's written or how Brie Larson portrays her, or some combination of both of those things. Either way, I liked it. I mean, this is a fun universe, and even the less interesting characters are still quite enjoyable.
Hey, what's rule number 1? Party? No, not party.
This is tied with The Rise of Skywalker for most predictable movie of the year. But unlike the latter, this movie is packed with an enormous amount of heart, solid writing, and a fantastic performance from Shia LaBeouf. There's nothing groundbreaking here, but it's a great family movie that I can't help but recommend.
Sorry about your window, but you're welcome for not getting robbed.
Oh, hey, what's up? I'm a superhero.
Far and away, Shazam is the most fun superhero movie I saw this year, and my second favorite DCEU film to date. I will still defend Man of Steel. They really nail the kid-to-adult characterization through both the writing and Zachary Levi's performance. This movie is leading the charge for DC's tonal shift, and I think they're going to find a lot more success with projects like this. For all of their faults, Marvel managed to pull off an epic and satisfying finale to a massive 10-year, 22-film project. I don't think it's possible to judge this film on its own, but as the final chapter in this incredible story, it's just about as close to perfect as you can ask for.
Put down the stapler, or I will electrocute you!
The second best video game movie ever made. The narrative is nothing to write home about, and there are plenty of problems throughout the film, but the world building is incredible. I think Justice Smith gives a solid performance, and this was honestly just such a fun film. It's really cool to see how they've incorporated Pokemon into a realistic world, and I'm excited to see what other stories they have to tell inside this universe.
Hey dude, are you sure?
Hey dude.
It's so much better.
This is a solid rom-com that could have been so much more. The concept of being the only person on Earth who seems to remember the music of the Beatles is really interesting, but the narrative ends up playing it safe and not exploring that premise as much as I feel like it could have. Still, this is a fun movie with obviously really great songs, and the Ed Sheeran bits make this well worth a rental.
All of this for what? Because of a puppy?
Wasn't just a puppy.
It's more John Wick. That's it. That's the review.
Hey! You're Rick fucking Dalton. Don't you forget it.
I abso-freaking-lutely love this movie. This is not going to be everyone's cup of tea. It's long, there's lots of talking, and there's not a whole lot of narrative. But the dialogue is so captivating. The setting of an idealized classic Hollywood is magical and mesmerizing. And both Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt absolutely kill in their roles as an actor waning in popularity and his loyal friend and stunt double. It's a movie about the movies, the culture surrounding them, or at least an idealized version of that, and learning to deal with your glory days being a relic of the past.
제시카 외동딸 일리노이 시카고 과선배는 김치모 그는 이사촌.
Best film of 2019.
It's watching.
Yeah. You're doing it extra hard tonight.
Oh, sorry, you wanted to know more about Parasite? Okay, well, first off, you should know that I hate subtitles with an unhealthy passion. I try to go to the English dubs of anime films. Yes, I'm a monster. Parasite is a subtitled Korean film, and it's still my movie of the year. I could run down the list of things Parasite does right. The acting, great. The dialogue, great. The cinematography, great. The everything, great. But Parasite doesn't just hit its marks well. It tells such an interesting and captivating story in such a unique and unexpectedly twisted way. I encourage you to refrain from watching or reading anything else about this movie and just go see it. Like right now. Trust me.
It's watching.
Yeah. You're doing it extra hard tonight.
Adam Sandler hasn't found a lot of success from both critics and fans in his recent Netflix films, but this one turned out alright. There's nothing crazy unexpected here, but the jokes are funny and the film is entertaining. It's the perfect Netflix comedy worth a couple of hours.
You still can't see what you did wrong? No, you need to face this, Charles. You need to face it. Come on, admit it to me right now. Come on, admit it. Charles, just admit you were wrong, please.
There are great X-Men films, and there are terrible X-Men films. Dark Phoenix is somewhere in the middle. I love so many of the characters in the X-Men universe, and for me, this movie is the culmination of just how little they've done with them. Given the right build-up, there could have been a lot of emotional moments. Instead, I left wishing the series of films hadn't wasted such good talent and characters on so many bad movies leading up to this one.
Looks like the tables have turned. That was an incredible catch.
This movie is like Dark Phoenix, but way worse. Dark Phoenix was disappointing, but Men in Black was straight up forgettable. You know the leads from Thor Ragnarok? So put them in like the most generic spy movie you can think of, give them no interesting dialogue, and watch these actors try their hardest to make this movie the slightest bit interesting. It's a bland film that is an absolute waste of time.
I am not a toy. I was made for soup, salad, maybe chili, and then the trash.
Dang it, Pixar. This movie shouldn't be good, but somehow it is. I remember thinking that Toy Story 3 was going to be a stretch, and that surely they didn't have any good material left. And looking back, it's now considered like the best of the series. But I really thought, surely, the fourth Toy Story would be too much. And somehow it isn't. This isn't my favorite of the Toy Stories, but it's honestly so much better than it has any right to be. Sporky is such a freaking great character, and while it unfortunately doesn't give Buzz Lightyear the best of send-offs in my opinion, it wraps up Woody's story in the most emotionally beautiful way. I wish I could cry in movies. I really do.
Fury, this all seems like big time. You know, huge superhero kind of stuff. And, I mean, I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, sir.
Bitch, please, you've been to space.
This current iteration of Spider-Man has been so much fun, but this is the movie that really brought him fully into the MCU, for better and for worse. Even after Endgame, it's Far From Home that really cements his transition from friendly neighborhood Spider-Man to full-blown Avenger. That struggle is really interesting, and I think this movie dealt with it really well. If I'm being honest, I think MJ is still the weakest part of these movies. She's very one-dimensional, and I wish they'd just let her break out of the weird box she's in and let Zendaya run with the character. But this movie has the absolute best end credits scene in a Marvel movie ever. Period.
All right then.
No, that's my door. Pick another door.
What's wrong with you? You know what? You were right. This is your door.
What's the matter? You got a lot of bad guys behind that door?
So I know this means I lose any film critic cred that I never had to begin with, but I had a lot more fun with this than I thought I would. As many others have pointed out, Fast and Furious has pretty much become a superhero franchise, and that's how I approach these movies. And for what it is, it's entertaining. The action is fun, and while the jokes are pretty dumb, I found myself laughing at a fair number of them. If you're on board with this series, I think you'll enjoy this spin-off.
Founder.
The most underrated film on this list. Holy cow, this movie is an absolute blast. It's so clever and funny, it's dark, it's tense. The lead, first off, is not Margot Robbie, but she is fantastic and kills in her role. I hope this opens the door for Samara Weaving to do more movies, because I loved her in this. The premise of a deadly game of hide and seek is so fun, and Ready or Not builds upon that idea so unbelievably well. If you like dark comedies, you owe it to yourself to check out this overlooked gem of a film.
Andy?
Stella!
Listen, you're in the next story. We're reading it right here.
It's a corpse looking for her missing toe.
I'm not the target audience for this one. I remember watching Jeremy John's review of it before going to see it with my sister, and he mentioned that Scary Stories was targeted more towards tweens and their parents. And he was absolutely right. There's nothing outright terrifying here, though that one creepy lady got scarier as the movie went on. Maybe that was just me. Anyway, the thing I remember most about it is how dark it was. Like literally dark. At least in the theater we were in, there were some scenes where it was legitimately difficult to see what was on screen. But that aside, if you're looking for a mild scare, this is an alright movie to what seems to be kind of an underserved niche. If you're not in that demographic though, I'd say just watch Ready or Not.
You're such a dick!
Every day I wake up and I hope you're dead. Dead like if I can guarantee Henry would be okay. I'd hope you get an illness and then get hit by a car and die.
Marriage Story is overrated. The first 10 minutes of this film showed so much promise, and then the cinematographer decided to just sit the camera on a tripod for the rest of the movie. Both Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson have incredible performances, but the movie is just a slog. It's still a good movie, but it's nowhere near as good as everyone has been saying it is. It's nice to see quality Oscar bait from Netflix, and Marriage Story is still worth a watch, just don't believe the hype.
You having a good time?
Yes.
Adam Sandler is a freaking genius. The man is worth over $500 million. He gets to take free vacations with his friends for all of his dumb, fun comedies he does, and then out of nowhere, he throws down an Oscar-worthy performance just because he can? Uncut Gems is the most stressful movie I saw last year. and Sandler is the perfect center to the crazy story it tells. Many comedic actors have tried their hand at dramatic roles, but Sandler could write the book on it.
If it was me dying on the sidewalk, you'd walk right over me. I pass you every day and you don't notice me. But these guys, what, because Thomas Wayne cried about them on TV?
You have a problem with Thomas Wayne, too.
Yes, I do. Have you seen what it's like out there, Murray?
I love this movie. Joker went from being the center of a completely manufactured controversy to becoming the most profitable comic book movie of all time, and it's awesome. Joaquin Phoenix's portrayal of Joker is just incredible. I had such high expectations for this film, and it still managed to nail everything it was shooting for. Watching the Joker slowly descend into madness was so compelling. I was enthralled with the narrative all the way through the end. If you can handle a darker comic book movie, you definitely need to check this one out.
CSI KFC?
This one was overhyped for me. Normally, I'm the guy that misses the most obvious twists in movies, but my sister and I called almost all the twists, and we had the ending pretty much worked out by about the halfway point. Knives Out is half mystery, half drama, and I felt it was ultimately just okay. Not bad by any means, but it just didn't go in on its weird characters as much as I think it should have. I know most people loved this one, but I thought it ended up being only alright.
But now they call me a scared rabbit.
Let them say whatever they want. People used to say a lot of nasty things about me. Oh, this guy's a lunatic. Oh, look at that psycho. He's gonna get us all killed.
The first half of this movie is easily the funniest part of a film from 2019. And then the movie takes a break from the comedy for almost the entirety of the rest of the story. I understand. The subject material this movie is touching on is incredibly sensitive, and there's definitely a need for more serious moments. I just wish it hadn't almost stopped being a comedy altogether, because I think Jojo Rabbit's humor is where its message is most poignant. But my nitpicks aside, I actually really liked this movie a lot, and I heartily recommend that you don't let the strange concept of Hitler being a young boy's best imaginary friend scare you away from what is genuinely a hilarious and touching story.
You don't have what it takes. I'll be president. And I nominate Little Rock as my VP.
So that means I get to be president if you get killed by zombies.
That wasn't what I was thinking when I offered you the position. But technically, yes.
Have you seen the first Zombieland? So imagine the same movie again. Like, different jokes and stuff, but like basically the same level of comedy. That's Double Tap. I really liked it, but if you weren't a fan of the original, you won't like this one either. If you are a fan of the first one though, make sure you stay through the first credit sequence.
Philip asked me to marry him.
No.
I wasn't really asking.
Nor was I. Love doesn't always end well, Beastie.
Okay, so confession. I haven't seen any of the recent Disney live-action adaptations. Nothing about seeing The Lion King, but without the animation that made it so great, is appealing to me. And no, neither Maleficent nor its sequel are anything to write home about. But at least they're trying to tell a different story from the original Sleeping Beauty. I can't really recommend this one, but I'll give it props for attempting to do its own thing.
Anna? Elsa? Sven? Samantha? I don't even know it's Samantha. Samantha?
Speaking of giving movies props for being different, Frozen 2 tells a much different story from the first, and it has a lot of interesting ideas. They just don't quite work together in the end. It's oddly paced, and while I'd recommend a plethora of other Disney films before this one, I'll also applaud its strive to tread new territory instead of lazily rehashing what's come before it. And speaking of lazily rehashing things that have come before, oh my gosh. Leading up to its release, I had an inkling that they were probably, to some extent or another, going to backtrack on some of the things that The Last Jedi did. But wow, did I underestimate just how far they'd go. I've calmed down from my initial reaction, but I'm still sorely disappointed in how poorly this finale was handled. Fan service is fine when it fits into the narrative. I mean, Avengers Endgame is pretty much dependent on its vast amount of fan service. But when you let it warp already established characters and plot threads, you end up with the monstrosity that is this movie. I could go on, but this topic has already been discussed to death, and I don't really have anything to add. Except that I am glad that we're done with these movies for a while. I never thought I'd say this, but I'm genuinely tired of Star Wars. At least when it comes to the mainline movies.
Right, well, that's not going to work, is it? That's what I say to you.
And finally, Cats. This movie is going to become a classic. The cult following is already forming, and Cats is going to be a staple of bad movie night groups and events for decades to come. I don't think it's possible for me to put into words just how awful, hilarious, and charming this masterpiece is. Cats is incredible, and if you've got a group to watch it with, I can't recommend this epic piece of cinema enough. Well, there you have it, the 35 2019 films I saw. I'm still trying to catch up on several of the big films that I missed, but I want to know from you guys, what were the best films that you saw last year? Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.